Guys, welcome to my channel. My name is ReadingBear and I hope you are ready for some more stories. And today, we'll take a look at some new entitled people content. If you enjoyed my content, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and post some bear emojis in the comment. And now, let's dive right into the stories.
The first story is titled, "This is Not Okay." Decided today was a great day to get my lunch from Panera. Felt like I deserved some yummy sandwich goodness. I roll up and what do I see? A postal truck parked in the handicap spot. Not just parked, mind you, this lazy beeper backed into the spot. My reasonable yet naive mind thought, well, maybe he's just making a quick delivery. So, I walk to the door of Panera and pass closely by the truck. Nope. No one inside the truck and the car isn't running. Walk inside and that jerk is strolling on down from the register to wait for his food to be ready. This dude is on lunch break. And he parked in the only van-accessible handicap parking spot. Oh, and there are only 2 handicap spaces total, and the other was being used that actually had a handicap placard displayed. And there are plenty of other parking available. This EP just thought he was some sort of special unicorn. So, I can feel my inner Karen rising. I pick up my rapid pickup order, stroll on outside and take a picture of the truck, making sure to get the truck number on the front. Quick Google search and I find a specific FAQ on the Postal Service website for who to call when a courier parks their truck in handicap. Honestly, the sheer fact that this is a FAQ is just flat out mind-blowing to me. Why do these people think parking in handicap is okay? Anyway, quick call with no hold time apparently, and I report that guy. I'm assured that what he did was not okay, and it will be addressed. The lady I spoke with on the phone was also deeply dismayed. Hope your flagrant disregard for handicap laws was worth it, dude. Edit. To those saying, how do you know he wasn't disabled? Obviously, there is no way to tell other than him not having a placard. Not like I was going to confront him and demand he proves it to me. If he's disabled, then me reporting it will do nothing to him, cause his superiors will already be aware and do nothing. They'll probably have a laugh about it and move on. If he wasn't disabled, then he needs to be held accountable. Simple as that. The next story is titled, "Being Entitled Burns Bridges Beyond Repair." So, here's the story. Names have been changed to protect the people involved. Cast of characters: Ellie, me, Tom, my boyfriend, Liz, Tom's mom, John, Tom's friend, Jane, John's wife, then ex-wife, Sharon, John's girlfriend. John and Jane lived on top of a mountain. There are only 2 roads that lead up the mountain and they are a nightmare to drive. A few months after they married, a storm hit and washed out one of the roads. This led to a lot of traffic, so John and Jane moved in with Jane's sister. Karen is not the most pleasant person to live with and she has a small place, so the living arrangements weren't great. I had just bought my first house. A 2,500 square feet 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom house on an acre of property. It also had a sunroom along with 2 3-car garages, one attached the other detached. Almost my dream home. I was only 25. I had a decent paying job. I spent the last 4 years living with my parents and put away 75% to 90% of my paycheck for the down payment. I also spent those 4 years building my credit, so I was able to get an interest rate most people only dream of. I also had a little luck. The housing market just had a downturn. The previous owner of this house had passed away and her daughter just wanted the house gone. I bought the house for $190,000, which is a steal in the area, on a conventional loan. I had put down 20% for a down payment. This becomes important later. Tom proposed to me and moved in with me. Tom and I felt this house was perfect to raise a family in. Due to John and Jane both having jobs at the bottom of the mountain, they both decided it would be better to find a place to live at the bottom of the mountain. I had a spare bedroom in my house, so I offered to rent it out to them. The plan was to rent the room so they could save up for the down payment for their own house. Backstory on John. Before Jane, John had been married before and had a son. Unfortunately, on a drive down the mountain his wife, son, and sister were all killed in a car accident. John had been severely injured. John and his wife were weeks away from buying their first home when the accident happened. Due to the accident, the purchase fell through. The house they were going to buy was an extra home belonging to John's mom. So, John and Jane rent a room in my house. Everything is great until they get divorced. John decides to continue renting out the room until he can figure out what to do next. A few months later, John decides to look for love again and meets Sharon. He had known her as an acquaintance before, so decided to try a relationship with her. This is where things start to go wrong. Background on Sharon. She's in a wheelchair due to spina bifida. She had been working at the customer service desk at a big box retailer but decided to go on disability instead. I know some parts don't add up, but this is what she told me, so I'm sticking with it. A week after their first date, Sharon moves in with John into the room. A few weeks after meeting Sharon, I get this impression of entitlement off of her. Her story of being on disability didn't sit right with me. She had expressed that she wanted to go back to school but forgot to turn in some important paperwork. She's sitting in my house watching TV and playing video games all day. How do you forget something so important? Fast forward a few months later and Tom lands his dream job. Unfortunately, it's 50 miles away and we live in one of the worst traffic areas in the US. Upside, it's a significant pay increase. Tom decides for the time being he'll commute. Due to his pay increase, Tom is able to pay more of the bills and talks me into getting a new car. I was in need of one anyway. We go down to the dealership and I come home with a brand new car. John and Sharon are quite surprised. Tom and I also have 2 dogs, a Great Dane and a Terrier mix. Anyone who has a large dog knows how difficult it is to find a rental. A few months after moving in, Sharon asked what permission did I have to get from the homeowner to allow my dogs to stay. I tell her that I'm the homeowner. She seemed very surprised. I had assumed that John told her, but I guess not. This was the start of the trouble. After months of commuting, Tom and I decide it would be better to sell my house and buy a new one near Tom's job. My job is easily transferable to anywhere. I tell John that I have plans to sell my house sometime within the next 6 months, so he needs to find a new place. John decides it's time to buy a house. A few weeks later, the following conversation ensues. John: will you take $150,000 for the house? Me: no, that's how much I owe on the place. I'd be losing money. John: will you take $200,000? Me: no, that's how much I bought this place for. I've made improvements and housing prices have gone up in the area. John: Sharon loves this place. It's perfect for her. It's mostly ADA compliant and the open concept and wide hallways are perfect for her. Me: then tell her you can't afford this house and find her a house you can afford. John: my mom let me have her house for half price. Me: I'm not your mom. The house is appraised at $280,000 and that will be my asking price. You are more than welcome to put in an offer when it comes on the market. Tom told me a similar conversation ensued with him as well. Sharon had even tried to backhandedly talk me into selling them my house. One day I was preparing myself lunch, a sandwich and salad. I went to my garden to go pick some tomatoes. Sharon said that she'd like to have her own garden, along with a lot of space for her dog to run around, both inside and outside. I just replied, well, I hope John can find a place like that he can afford. Specifically putting an emphasis on afford. The next month John doesn't pay me the rent. He claims his employer stiffed him and that he's filed grievances with his union. He shows me the paperwork. The same thing happens next month. I tell him no problem, just pay me when he gets his back pay. The 3rd month rolls around, and I ask for the rent. He tells me he hasn't gotten his back pay yet. A week later, a delivery for a new smartphone comes for Sharon with John's name on it. The following week I see doggy bags in the fridge for a pretty high-end restaurant. The 4th month comes, and I ask for the rent. John makes a claim that there's parts of the house that are not ADA compliant for Sharon. I remind him that Sharon is not on the lease and technically I can kick her out because she's overstayed her guest welcome. Plus, she's been here for a while. Why is this the first time I'm hearing about these complaints? John leaves the room. During the 2nd month, Liz comes over with a friend of hers. Both their cars need new spark plugs. So does my car and Tom's car. Tom agrees to change them as long as everyone bought their own plugs. John asks if he could have his changed too. Tom agrees to do so. Liz and her friend decide to go to the parts shop for us to get parts while her friend offers to go get us all lunch. When they got back, we would pay them back. When they get back, we all pay them except John and Sharon. John tells Liz what's going on and Liz tells him to pay her once he gets his back pay. Liz and her friend give back the money for Tom and mine's cars and lunch. They said to consider it payment for the labor. Quick backstory on Liz and John. John's mom has enough wedding rings to for each finger in both hands. Most of the husbands were very questionable and weren't exactly dad material. John's mom wasn't exactly motherly material either. When John met Tom's family, they took him in and treated him like another member of the family. John has often looked to Liz for advice and motherly support. After 2 months of no payments and no responses from John, Liz texts and emails him to ask when she is going to be paid for the spark plugs and lunch. John never responds. This is when we tell her what's been going on. Liz sends John an email saying that she is going to disown him. Since he's asked her for motherly support, this is something she does not approve of. She can take the monetary loss, but it's the principle of what he's doing, and that she is also very upset to where he is spending the money. On the 5th month I ask John for the rent again. He says something about me wronging him. I remind him that the event happened over a year ago and it was for a problem he complained to me about. I contacted a contractor to come fix the problem and I had given him weeks' notice about the contractor. John then tries to play the sympathy card, saying that I should be more aware of his personal problems. I ask him if he had rented a regular apartment instead of from me. Do you think the landlord cares about his personal problems? When he buys a house, is the mortgage company going to care? I relay Liz's message to him. I also remind John that wasn't the point of renting a room from me instead of an apartment was to save up money for a down payment. So, pay me out of that savings account. John refuses to answer. I tell him I'd better be paid in a week. A week later I'm asking for the rent again. John tries the excuse that I wronged him over a year ago. I present him with his 3-day eviction notice. John tries to make an excuse that I cannot evict Sharon because she's disabled. I remind him that she's his guest. If he goes, she goes. I tell him if I don't have at least half my money in 3 days I'm changing the locks. 2 days later there's a moving truck in the driveway. Although I cannot prove it, I have a feeling Sharon put the idea in John's head to not pay me. It's a nice coincidence that John stops paying me shortly after Sharon finds out that I'm the homeowner. Sharon had never lived in a house before, only apartments. When I confronted John about unpaid rent, she seemed very content and not surprised. Somehow, I also believe that Sharon thinks my parents bought me my house. During a confrontation, John had said that I had my parents' help. My parents helped me find, negotiate and fill out paperwork for my house but did not contribute any money. My parents do not believe that parents should buy their children luxury items like houses and cars. Tom and Liz showed me that although I would win in court, it would cost me more money to get my money back than the money I was owed. I took the loss. Within a matter of months, John went from being Tom's choice for his best man to being uninvited from our wedding. After evicting him, John went to a mutual friend for help, but the friend wanted nothing to do with it. Apparently, John had done a similar thing to the friend years prior, but everyone was told it was a bad misunderstanding. Due to being uninvited and going to the friend for help, the news spread quickly amongst our friends. For a year John and Sharon were not invited to any parties or get-togethers. We have since run into them at some parties, but I try to avoid them to avoid confrontation. I think John has finally realized how much he relied on friends for certain things and how he's burned those bridges. Those burned bridges have cost him in both financially and in friends. Unfortunately, those bridges are burned beyond repair. The next story is entitled Woman Thinks She Controls the House. I am a permanently physically disabled guy, who in 2007 was renting a room in a large house owned by a lovely older woman from Taiwan. Unfortunately, given the nature of the house, a lot of people there came and went, and sometimes we'd get a real creep. Single father in his 50s was perving on the owner's 17-year-old daughter. Then we got a woman from Fiji who seemed really nice. Until Christmas Day. The owner had the garage renovated into a nice big bedroom, where this 50-ish Fijian lady moved in. However, on Christmas Day, she holed up in her room with her adult son. She decided to start flipping the breaker switches. Recall that her bedroom used to be the garage. On Christmas, when it was 17 degrees Fahrenheit outside, so we really needed the power for space heaters. House was old, so no central heat/air. When we knocked on the door, her son would answer without opening up and telling us that his mother was sleeping, and we had to go away. This continued for 2 hours before I got sick of it and had to call the landlord up from the next state where she was celebrating with her then fiancé. She drove 90 minutes just to show up and serve an emergency eviction. This brought the woman and her son out, allowing the fiancé to get the electricity back onto the rest of the house. That night, this nutty broad spent the entire night screaming while she utterly destroyed the kitchen. She even managed to rip the oven door off its hinges. Thankfully, the landlord returned in the morning with city police and escorted her out with her stuff. She had a new range unit brought in that afternoon. The last story is titled, "Co-worker's sister threatened for just moving cardboard." This is not my story but my co-worker's that he told me happened at his family apartment complex. This happened yesterday and involved the upstairs neighbor and his sister. Now with this neighbor I should mention that my coworker has seen this guy carry a gun while taking out trash outside, which made little sense to my coworker. Anyway, to story, the neighbor has trash can outside set next to the first floor apartment, coworker's family's side entrance. Please note that the neighbor has his own side door to his second floor apartment, which is his only one, while the first floor has a front and their side door. Now the neighbor had cardboard meant for trash that couldn't fit in the trash can stuck behind it in such way that it blocked the first floor side door where the family couldn't use it while the cardboard was there as it was. Yesterday the sister in question, who happens to be a brand new mom with a 10 to 9 month baby, went out and moved the cardboard so that it didn't block the door. The neighbor came out and threatened to shoot her if she touched the cardboard again. Needless to say, the family called the landlord and immediately had the neighbor evicted, and according to my coworker, the U-Haul truck out there hauling out the neighbor's stuff out of his apartment. Edit. Well, the neighbor thus far left a message outside the building and had large boxes in front of my coworker's side door, and recently a nasty phone call that was directed to his mom, who lives there, though it's not determined who it was according to the coworker, but I am not surprised if it was given the timing. But not yesterday either. His mom or the neighbor has removed the largest boxes. Thanks for listening.